Hi, and welcome to this review of the Milwaukee M12 Multi-tool. This guy right here I've had for a few years. It's pretty useful. It does a variety of things, and I bought it as a kit. And with the kit, it comes with a bag, a variety of blades, most of which I've used and I had to throw away. It comes with the sanding pad and a variety of Velcro attached sanding discs. You get a small battery charger, the Allen wrench to put the tool on, and outside of this thing right here, the most important piece, is this adapter right here that lets you use aftermarket items with this tool. So with the Milwaukee branded pieces, they just fit right onto the tool, and then you can it just screws on there straight. But if you buy somebody else's piece, it's not going to fit on there necessarily. Like if you get a Dremel, or this is Master Mechanic, basically you're going to want to never lose this thing, because these are expensive and you want to buy the cheapest thing you can, because they're going to wear out super fast no matter who made it. I mean like crazy fast, like a couple, 3 cuts and you're pitching a $7 blade away. You can go to any home improvement store and get a variety of different blades. This is for soft metal and wood. This is just for wood alone. And then you can get these flat ones, are pretty handy for cutting pieces of wood. And then there's different sanding discs that you can get for it. It's all pretty handy. Attaching it's a little bit of a pain. Not too bad, but you're not going to want to be changing these things out too frequently. The worst part of one of these tools is one of these things just does not last at all. And the other thing that's a little bit tricky about these guys is if you're using it to cut with. So if you're like using it in drywall, it works super fantastic because it just goes through drywall like butter. But if you're trying to cut a piece of metal or a piece of wood, it's just not quite as great, because it's going to just eat through the blade, and then it's really hard to cut straight with one of these things. I had my metal blade right here. Yeah, here's a blade. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but I did a couple cuts with this thing, and I mean, this thing is just about smooth on top, which is really unfortunate, because it works good when you have a fresh blade, and it's really fun to use, but they go south so quick. It's really disappointing. So if you're cutting metal, you're probably going to want to look at other things. Like if you wanted to cut a nail, get your rotating tool like a Dremel or the M12 rotating tool I reviewed earlier. Put the grinding or the cutting disc on there and go at it with one of those things. But the thing where it really shines is if you the sanding disc, put that on there, and it is really super easy to use. It's lightweight, the grip feels really good in your hand, and it sands like a dream. The bad part is if you have only this small battery that came with it, it doesn't last very long. So you either need a whole bunch of these guys, or invest in this guy right here, and it's worth every penny, because this lasts like 3 times longer. You'll be ready to take a break from sanding before this runs out of juice. So this is really the way to go. I'm going to put I'll put a blade on here and cut through something so you can kind of see what it's like, and we'll call her quits. Just like most of the M12 line, it has a battery gauge on it, so when you turn the power on, you can see how much battery life you have left. The battery light doesn't stay on with this. It's on for like a couple seconds and it turns itself off. So as you're going along, if you want to see how far you are, like if you're using it as a sander and you're sanding for a while, you got to turn it off and then turn it back on to see how much battery you have left. And being lithium ion, it runs pretty strong right up until the point that it quits, and then it's done, because it just all of a sudden quits. And the other thing is, if you're using this, you're pretty much going to want to grab gloves right away, because this thing vibrates like you have no idea, and it will just wear your hand out. So I have this piece of wood right here. Normally I would not use this tool to trim this end off, but I'm just going to use it anyways, because just for demonstration purposes, because I just needed something to cut into. Oh, here we go. Well, that's kind of a big piece. It's not. This blade's way too small for that. I'm going to grab something smaller here real quick. But you can see it goes pretty quick. Why is that hot? Holy shit. Okay, I'm having a little trouble because in order for this to cut, this has got to be like rock firm, and so this vibrates, and if this is able to vibrate with it, then it doesn't cut at all, but it does make your hand hot. It's crazy. Yeah, so better for sanding. Well, if you've watched this far, this is probably the worst product demonstration in the history of products. But it does illustrate something. One, if you have something that's bigger than your blade, it's really hard to get a clean cut. And two, if you're cutting with this thing, the blade is a little flexible. So if you push in one direction, it'll actually start to curve the other way, and vice versa. If you're like in a piece of wood and the blade bows out that way, it'll start to go in a direction that you don't anticipate it to. So if we're using it to cut something, it's got to be something pretty soft if you want it to cut straight, a la the drywall. Or it's got to be a real shortcut where you can just zip right through it, and it's got to be something that's really rigid, because if it can vibrate at all, it just does not cut worth a flip. So, oops. But otherwise, I'd have to say, I got to widen out here a little bit. I really like this tool, even though it does have some shortcomings. It does have a lot of really good points to it, especially for using it as a sander, which I did not demonstrate, but it works good.